I'm going to be really honest with you and say, if I take my photography business, for example, I think it's back to normal. My challenge post COVID is actually that I've had a career pivot with my business. So it's going through that. Um, Before COVID, I had big plans to take my photography business international, and I'd started to build a client base in London. So I'm based in South Africa. I'd started to make contacts overseas to be able to take the business in a direction where I would be traveling internationally to work, which COVID pulled the handbrake up on and completely killed, to be quite honest. So I think there's that challenge, but and I know we're talking about this today, is I think it's to go, okay, this has happened, where do I go next, rather than getting too caught up in, oh, that's a shame, is this has happened, we're moving forward. So I've pivoted into an online space of coaching alongside my photography. We had a death in the family last year. My stepmom died, which was a bit of a reminder to me of I need a business that allows me to be able to pick up and move. So I think that's the post-COVID challenge for me. I think here in South Africa, the challenges are people's mindset about the economy. You know, we hear lots of stuff, the economy's tanked and it's all really difficult. And I think that is the challenge post-COVID, is people are listening to what is the conversations that are happening. There's no money, it's because of COVID. And I think what's required is a mindset shift. So I think the mindset is the post-COVID challenge more than circumstances, to be honest.
Pre-COVID, for me, I was doing a lot of business in the UK, and I was traveling from Australia to Taiwan, from Taiwan to Sydney to Dubai to the UK. And it was all exciting until the fatigue kicked in. And then I was saying to Ninny, I said, what I want when Caesar was born was to actually stay at home. And so I had been secretly wanting something like COVID to come along. And it actually gave me the opportunity to be at home with my son from 2017 to 18 to 19, all the way up to 2024. But now I'm getting itchy. I want to move. And I remember how fatiguing it was. I remember how lonely it was to travel. But there's this illusion, you know what, I could go through that all again. And I kind of delete all of those painful memories of being away. And so for me, as I reinvent after COVID, I've got to remind myself there was fatigue. There was hours wasted sitting on the aircraft in the airport. Yes. Is that where you want to go back to?
Yeah.
Or is there another direction? And that mindset is so important because albeit we can be ultimately optimistic, you know, there's certain realities in the world that we've got to deal with. And if family's important, why not build a business that you can be there for your family and support them through those challenging times rather than having your dream take you to the other side of the world and avoid those things.
Absolutely. And I agree with you what you're saying about the travel piece. Is it seems really glamorous to be kind of jet setting off to go and work here and go and work there. But like you've said, the reality is you're on your own in a hotel room, you're working very, very hard, and then you get back on an airplane and come home. And I think it's, you know, I think COVID shifted with people's losses. It shifted perspective into what's important. And I know certainly for me, post-COVID, losing my stepmom shifted stuff. And what am I doing? Why am I constantly focusing on work all the time when actually what's important is my family and my relationships? So how do I shift work to fit that? So the priorities shifted.
And the older you get, the more exhausting the travelling is. Both Nini and I, we were cabin crew, we were air hostesses and stewards, and we travelled around the world. But it was always easy to be crew because you were standing up, you were moving around. But for a lot of people, they're squashed in their seat like a sardine for 12 hours if you're flying from Sydney to Dubai, another 8 hours to the UK, and you just got to sit there. But it's exhausting. And then when you get there, you need another day just to relax after being on the aircraft. And it's easy to be under those illusions, and it is the mindset. The mind plays games. It's like women who give birth. They forget about the pain. And that's a good thing about the mind. It forgets about the pain. And then he says to me, I want to have a third child, but we've got to get a surrogate. I don't want to go through all that all again. I don't want my belly to be stretched. So
Very
maybe we can have people
sensible.
do the travel.
Delegate the work.
You know, people are always talking about procrastination. And I'd love to hear from your perspective. How do you define procrastination? And what are people avoiding? And more importantly, what are they doing instead of doing what they should be doing?
So I think procrastination is avoiding doing the tasks you need to do in order to reach the goals you want to hit. And I think people procrastinate because often the tasks you've got to do to get to those big goals are difficult. Maybe you don't know what they are. So it's kind of fear of the unknown. I think they're tasks that put you out of your comfort zone. So you think, don't really want to have to reach out to 20 people and see if I can connect with them to create some opportunities. So I won't because it's uncomfortable for me. And I think that is the root of procrastination. And it's also, I think there are two other parts to it. It's fear of success, is if I do all these things and I have success in business and my life completely changes, what is it going to look like? And I think these are quite subconscious fears, really. And the other one is fear of failing. What if I do this? What if I do all this work? What if I do all these things that make me really uncomfortable and it doesn't work? And I think all of those things kind of swirl around to make people go, do you know what? I'm just going to stay where I am. Or if you've allocated a day to do the difficult task, suddenly there's a cupboard that needs to be spring cleaned, or you go and binge watch Netflix, or just sit kind of scrolling on socials, because I think they are the ultimate escape. It takes us into another world. So we stop thinking about the things we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. What I hear from you, it's not the task itself that's the problem. It's the emotion that's associated to it that creates the bigger problem. And one of my friends recently, one of my clients, he has been preparing for 2.5 years to compete at the World Masters Boxing Championships. So he's had 2.5 years of conditioning his mind and his body. He's had to lose weight, put on muscle, change his diet, quit smoking, give up the coffee, give up the Coca-Cola. And he did everything he needed to do. He got on the flight. He went to Queensland. He went to the World Masters Boxing Championships. He won the first round. And then after he won the first round, everybody else said, we don't want to fight him.
Okay.
And he prepared for 2.5 years. He was there on the day. He beat the first competitor, and then all the other competitors said, we don't want to fight him. And so he'd done all the preparation, and then he couldn't even fight. Nothing that he did.
Yeah.
But all the other competitors ran away. And I saw what he went through 2.5 years of excitement and challenge. And it's an example of failure. He'd done all that work, and now he still doesn't get his world championship belt. Nothing that he did. It was out of his control. And I asked him the other day, I said, would you do it again? He said, no way. I wouldn't. I had to have so many disciplines to get there. It's like I couldn't do it for another 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what people are worried about. What if I do all of this work? What if I make the sacrifices, spend time away from the family, and then something out of my control, it doesn't work? I can see that with those emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're ruled by that. And what I imagine for your boxing client is massive disappointment. And he must have sat questioning, what did I do all this for? And could I have done something different? And if only I hadn't stopped smoking, maybe I wouldn't have been such a fierce opponent. And I think it's the questioning. And I think it's that there is some work to be done there when we face things like that, of questioning the thoughts that are happening. What thoughts are coming up here? Because our thoughts create the emotions, and the emotions create the action that we take. So it's getting a handle on the way we're thinking, so we can kind of stop the failure train, if you like, kind of leaving the station with us on it. I think it's so important to learn to reframe failure. I'm curious as to how your guy has done that, because that is a huge disappointment that he experienced.
I've set goals for years, and what I always learned was that the journey is more important than the destination. But for a lot of us who are results oriented, that's all we care about. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care about the journey. I don't care how painful it is. I'm going to do the do, and so I can have the have. But when you don't get what you set out to achieve, that word disappointment, it really sets in. You know,
Yeah.
what if I
Yeah.
put my energy somewhere else? I could have been 2.5 years ahead down another path. Coming back to how my client reframed it, well, he's writing a book and he's going to talk about the blueprint for success, and he's going to talk about the importance of the journey. And so for him, he understands when he looks back all the things that happened on the journey that made him a better person. Yes, there's going to be that disappointment, but I think that's a little bit of the formula of life. We have our ups, we have our downs, we have our wins, we have our losses. And for him, he might not have got the belt, but he's going to have a book. And through that book, he's probably going to have a bigger impact than he would have if he'd actually just won the belt and everybody said, oh, gee, that was easy. It's the reality
Yeah.
that there was no belt. And I think, yeah, people procrastinate because of those feelings. I don't
Yeah.
want to feel disappointed.
Yeah.
I don't want
Yeah,
to feel
that's it.
rejected.
Mm-mm. And I think sometimes it feels easier to just say, well, where I am is not quite where I want to be, but I know where I am. I'm comfortable with this. If somebody throws a challenge at me in my comfort zone, I can happily deflect it, deal with it. But what if I go to the next level and there's a challenge I can't overcome? And I think all of these thoughts happen for us that literally just keep, this is what keeps most people stuck. The what if.
Mm.
And I think sometimes there has to be a driver of reframing that question to what if I just stay where I am? Because that I think that can be more terrifying if you start to question it in a different way.
Mm. What if I'm in this job for another 20 years? What if I'm in this relationship for another day? What if I'm in this fat body for the next 2 years and I missed the 2 good summers? A lot of people, they don't want to feel that disappointment, but we've still got to keep moving forward. The sun rises, the sun sets, the days clock over on the calendar, and we're going to get older. But as we get older, we're also going to we've got less time to do what we want, and we've got to be able to move forward. So what does it take to keep going forward in the face of that adversity, especially after you have loss after loss after loss? How do you keep going?
I think it's important to always have your end goal in mind when you're wanting to go somewhere, and the why behind it. So you might have a goal to, it might be a financial goal. Let's say it's a goal to hit $1 million in revenue. But why do you want that? What is that going to do for you? And I think to focus on, is it going to change the life of your family? Is it going to allow you to see your family more often? Like for me, my family are all on a different continent. So it's keeping the why of, why am I getting up every day to do this? And if you don't have a why, that is the time to say, hang on a minute, I think I need to make some changes here so that I can get out of bed with purpose each day. I think purpose is so important. And I think it's really valuable to learn to reframe failures when they happen, to have a look at it and say, okay, this didn't work. What could I do differently that maybe I could make it work next time? Or am I being sent down another path, and can I accept that and embrace it? Like your guy with the boxing, I suspect, like you've said, he's probably going to find he's more successful and has a bigger reach by writing a book about what he prepped for and didn't get than, like you've said, if he'd have got that belt. And I think it's this mindset piece. It's being able to pick yourself up and dust yourself down one more time and go again, and to keep learning from the things that don't work. I think a lot of people who don't make progress just get stuck with, oh, that didn't work, I'm no good, I'm just going to stay here because it's easier. And it does take a lot of strength of character to be able to take it to the next level and say, but I still really want this. So what's another way I might be able to tackle this? I think it's just that question of, what else could I do here? and just constantly being able to question those thoughts, and like I've said, just to keep that why in mind. Why are you doing this? Because it's so important. If we don't have a why, it's very difficult to get up and keep doing something. I think that's when the procrastination kicks in. And if you don't have a why, you might as well just go and watch Netflix.